Even though I can see it, under current rules, you, a television viewer, cannot. It has to be disguised. I can look, not from choice exactly, but I don't think it's doing me any harm. This is the frontier of today's nudity. One day, inevitably, things will change. Even so, I'm glad I kept my clothes on.
We're not sure about that. Ladies and gentlemen, Joan Bakewell.
Well,
I know.
fancy choosing that out of a career of serious-minded broadcast.
Well, not serious about it. That's about taboos. That was a programme you did about
taboos,
indeed. About breaking.
And it's very interesting because I'll tell you about the making of that episode. There was much more of it.
What's it?
So much. It went on for minutes, and the young man began to flag.
And who wouldn't?
You know what a fluffer is, don't you?
A fluffer?
A fluffer.
No.
It's in making of pornography, you have ladies who oblige so that the shot can continue.
Oh, I see.
Did
you know that?
I used to be one.
So I went on walking around and walking. I didn't know what expression to put on my face. I tried everything. And the sequel to that was, first of all, they put a large chunk of it in the programme. And I said, there's no way you can have 2 minutes of me staring at an erect penis. It's just not part of my CV. So then it had to be approved by the BBC. And it was referred up, an appropriate phrase, referred up to management, and it went all the way up to the top management, who came down and said, because it wasn't pixelated at that time, and the message came down, it has to be pixelated, because it was taboo. Literally, they were really very upset. And you still wouldn't see that on television.
No,
you would see it in films. You get it in Michael Winterbottom's film, you see it. So it was pixelated, and it went out like that. And we got the message afterwards that the people who had asked for that said, we weren't quite sure about the pixelation because it made it throb.
I'm sorry, it did. It was wonderful. What is it about you and sex and things? I mean, what is it?
Well, you tell me, Michael.
I don't know. I mean, thinking man's crumpet and televisual Viagra and...
You know, it's part of life. Been part of my life.
Well,
continues to be part of my life.
Exactly, but I mean, when you think about the sort of way you came from Stockport and the working class background, I mean, I imagine that sex was a taboo subject.
It was. I grew up a long time ago, and it was very repressed. It was at the same time as you did,
well,
Michael.
Exactly.
Come
so
on.
it's not that long ago. We're contemporaneous. You're 73 and I'm 71.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I'm your senior.
You are my senior.
It was a very repressed time. I mean, people... It was just conventional that you didn't show a slip of petticoat. You didn't glimpse a cleavage. I mean, it was simply taboo, which, of course, gave it great excitement. And I was excited as anyone else. I mean, there was a great frisson to sexuality because it was forbidden.
Yes.
And we were very curious, but no one was telling us what to do, and we experimented in strange places, usually in the back seat of the cinemas, which were always, you know, they were geared up to accommodate two without the arm in the middle.
So the love seats,
the love seats at the back, and we learnt rather by experience, and really it was very sheltered life, and then we all went to university and read D.H. Lawrence, and the world changed for us. And we began to discover that it was really rather a thrilling part of life, and so on.
It must have been a lot worse for women than men in those days, too, of course.
Well, in the early years of television in the 60s, there was no such thing as ban on sexual harassment. So sexual harassment was part of life in those days. It was something you could expect. I did expect it. I wasn't, you know, disappointed. I mean, people were... They just poured you if they got the chance. I mean, even while I was conducting an interview, Sir Mortimer Wheeler had his hand on my knee. What did I want to... I'm a live broadcast. Did you like that?
I loved it.
He loves being sexually harassed.
She's a bit of a go, eh? You know what I mean?
It's interesting because, I mean, that wasn't the worst part of it in a sense, was it? Because the worst part of it was that women were not expected to be on television to start with.
No, it was very eccentric. It was very unusual.
Yes, it was, indeed.
And that invited a certain attention. You got it from the press, but you got it from the public too. But also, I was out there alone. I mean, there was no other women doing regular television programmes at all. And the whole building, television centre, was, apart from actresses, was run by men in suits, ordered, headed departments and ran programmes. We had a woman producer on a late-night lineup, and we had a wonderful support system of women, but they didn't get out in front of the camera.
Did they ever explain to you why?
Yes, I mean, I went to see, it's an oft-told tale, this, I went to see the head of news, and I said, look, it's the 60s, things are changing, and I don't want a different job than the one I have already, but I would like to know when women will be allowed to read the news. And he said, oh, John, I'll make it very clear why they'll never be able to read the news. They will never read the news. First of all, their clothes will be distracting. Their voices will be too shrill. And when there's bad news, they won't be able to contain their emotions.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
It is.
And that was considered, that was a reasonable, and that was the head of news at the time who had made that decision. In fact, it wasn't many years before Angela Rippon broke that taboo, and she was reading the news late on BBC Two, and of course she does have the most beautifully dark modulated voice, which made her, you know, acceptable as the new arrival, and from then on Anna Ford arrived.
But the great thing about you was not so much that you actually got the job and you did it in defiance of all this, but also, I mean, what you did was you used your looks, you used your sense of fashion, you wore short skirts, you were a very modern woman, weren't you?
Well, I enjoyed, you know, I've always enjoyed clothes, and the short skirts were very new. I mean, someone did write to me once and said, I think you should know that 3 million people saw your bottom last night on television. And my response was, we don't have 3 million viewers. I would only wish that we had. But it's so that it stirred that up quite a bit. And I enjoyed that. And also, how you look is part of your personality. So I would be hard put to separate the one from the other.
Absolutely, and you flirt with people, and why would you not? I mean, that's part of an interviewer's equipment.
Yes, you use the phrase, of course, the familiar phrase, and that got me into trouble in the 60s with the very harsh feminists who, in a sense, I'm talking about the, you know, the dungarees and no makeup, whatever.
Yes.
And
bobber boots.
they had a cause and they were pursuing it, but they saw me as a treacherous betrayer because I like clothes and makeup, and indeed I like men, and I made that clear. And they came up to me at one of the kind of feminist occasions which I went to and said, you have no place here. You have no place here, you've betrayed, you know, what we're about, you don't understand it. And I think in the long term, I probably understood it better than they did without realising it, that in fact, women across the board are all interested in having equal pay and equal opportunity. It doesn't matter whether you wear loads and loads of makeup and show your cleavage, or whether you want to dress in a very plain way and, you know, look like a truck driver.
Sure. Quite right. When you talk about being attracted to men, of course, I must ask you about the affair that you had, the well-known affair with Harold Pinter.
That one, you mean?
That one. Yeah, we'll choose that one, shall we?
Yes, we'll keep quiet about us, Michael.
About us, yes. Shall we? Or shall we tell the world now? But in your book that you wrote, I think 2 years ago, was it? You wrote called Centre of the Bed. You detailed this or wrote about this affair. What was interesting to me was the notion that you put forward that you could be content and happy with 2 men at the same time. That your husband, Michael, you were happy with. Indeed, he knew about the affair and sanctioned it in a sense, gave it his blessing, and that you could also love your lover as well, and there was equal feeling, and without. Well, I mean, it must have caused you some distress. It must have caused you some...
Yes, I mean, I wrote about it because Harold had written a play about it. And the play, indeed, also is about that very sense of that within a relationship, within all the separate relationships in the play, there is treachery. And, you know, is that true of life? It makes it a very poignant play. So I wrote about, and it became known that the play was about our affair. So that's why I attempted to flesh out from my point of view how it had felt. And it had felt exhilarating and sort of irresistible and those kind of things. And I don't go into the ramifications of the intimacies, but it was a sustained relationship with 2 separate men in separate situations. And it worked for the spell of time that it did, which was something like 8 years.
Yes. I mean, what's extraordinary again was Pinter's reaction. I mean, it broke down in a sense because he found out that your husband had sanctioned the affair and got angry about it. Indeed,
that's right.
Indeed, the betrayal in the play is he feels betrayed because Michael knew about it.
The whole thing about the play is that every single person within the play betrays something that they love, whether it's their love of literature or as publishing or books or other men's wives or lovers and so on. And that there is a texture of betrayal under a current of extremely close and genuinely devoted relationships.
Yes.
That's why the play is so brilliant and why audiences are left really thinking about it very hard when they go home. There are a lot of silent couples in cars not speaking on the way home.
That's wonderful, a play written about that kind of moment in your life. But then you got married again, and do you still see Harold Pinter? Are you
Yes,
still...
I had lunch with him about 2 or 3 weeks away, and he's opened in a play recently in London. So.
Very sophisticated journalist, you know. I don't know what Stockport would have made of it at the time.
No idea. I have no idea.
Now, you've got this new book out, which is your view of life now at the age of 73. It's a collection of your Guardian articles. Indeed, when you reached the age of 70, you took a job, didn't you?
Well, everybody dreads the big zero at the end of their birthday, don't they?
Yes, they do.
From 50, 60s, and 70 was just going to be intolerable. I'd had big parties at 50, and I had them at 60, and I had one at 65, which was trying to slow it down a bit. When we got to 70, I thought, no, I just must start a new job. So I went to talk to the Guardian and said, look, not done it before. Let me do what it's like to be part of the ageing population. And I think they took it up because so many of us are getting older. I mean, the percentage of older people in the population is very great. And it's simply no longer enough to sort of slough off the old as past it, retired, waiting to die, life on the downward slope. It isn't like that anymore.
No.
And so I just wrote a sort of commentary on what it was like.
And what sort of reaction have you had from those people?
Oh, well, the warmest, when I was doing the column, I put my email address at the bottom, and it came out on Friday mornings, and I set Friday mornings aside to answer all the emails, because people would write and say, oh, did you know, let me tell you about me. I had that problem with pensions, and I got sacked, and isn't it terrible? Or they would just write anecdotes and say, oh, I so remember the 60s. Well, the 60s, wonderful. We had such a good time. I'm so glad you're telling young people what it was like. So it was enormously sympathetic, and at that point, The Guardian said, I think there's a book in this.
Yes. That book's called The View from Here. That's a collection of your work. And what centre of the bed you chose for your title for your autobiography?
Why did I choose the centre of the bed?
Yes.
I thought it was a good title.
It's a wonderful title.
And it was literally true, because I'd recently been divorced and was therefore living on my own and moved into the centre of the bed. So it was literally, it's like The View from Here, it was where I was. And it was very interesting, because when I talked to groups of people about the book and explained this, a number of widows said to me, well, you know, I don't move to the centre of the bed because I'm bereaved, and I don't want to lose the sense that there was once the person I loved sharing the bed with me. And I hadn't thought of that. I thought that was rather poignant. But I was very pleased to get to the centre of the bed.
So that when you reach the conclusion you can actually occupy the centre of the bed, then you're satisfied, you're content with yourself and your new way of life.
And also, but my doctor said, but you know what goes on in the centre of the bed. And I hadn't thought of that either. You need a little comfort, I think, Eric.
Really? Joan Bakewell, thank you very much indeed. Joan Bakewell.